Alright, hi everyone, this is Ion Blaze, and in the previous video we went over the 1 to 50 class guide, at least the classic era, for Necromancers, and in this one it's going to be my favorite class of all time in EverQuest, the Bard. This is the class I pretty much play the game for. So, let's get into it, shall we? So I'm going to be talking about what Bards can do soloing, what they can do grouping, and what they can do raiding, what they're important for. And hopefully this will be a lot more detailed than even I could do for the Necromancer class. So let's first get into it. What are the things that you can do soloing? How can you do it? Let me go to it. Let me see if I got... Do I have a soloing twist? Letho might help me out. Or I can have you both. Anyways. Yeah, I might actually... Letho might help me out with the rogue guide. So anyways, let's get into it. So, soloing wise, Bards, the first way you can do it, it's Chant Kiting. So what this is you typically want to keep a snare up on your mob like this, Cell's consonant chain. And you kite the mobs around while you dot them. With Fuful's Curtailing Chant, Tuyin's Chant of Flame, and Chant of Frost. Ideally, you want to be using your percussion instrument so that it's maximally effective. This can take a while though. Mind, this can definitely take a while. So it is a way to solo without taking any damage, but you need some room to move and it can not as fast as Necros. Second thing you can do is you can do charm kiting. So bards, they get 2 charms. Classic era, you get Solon's Bewitching Bravura. This one costs 60 mana and lasts for a minute. I don't like how they changed it from P99. It was a 15-second charm that costed 20 mana. This just burns so much mana that you can't use it as much. But this works up to 51. You can charm up to 51 as a bard in Classic. And the other charm costs no mana, but I think it only works until your 30s. Or about 40, 41. This costs no mana, lasts 18 seconds. Yeah, 18 seconds is the normal duration. This is very usable. When you're lower in levels, this is a great thing to use. You'll add so much extra DPS, and you might as well pull 2 mobs at any time because you can add a lot. You can just charm one. You charm a pet, use it to beat down your other mob, and then when the charm breaks, you kill the pet. Simple as that. Another thing you can do is fear kiting. I think this is the second. This is one of the slower methods. This is basically you're going to be using your melee. You're going to be using your melee weapons. And what you do is you use this fear. I think this works up to 51 or 52, but I'm not entirely sure. This is a 12-second fear. That's AoE. Keep that in mind. It's a AoE. Anything in the area, even if you don't want it to get it, you're going to grab it with this AoE. You do your fear like a necro, and you do your snare like a necro, and you just basically beat it down melee. You could use dots if you wanted to, but at that point, if you're using dots, really you should just be chant kiting them. You can use your dots, but ideally you want to be using a haste. So if you're going to be doing a solo, you're going to want to use this one. This is your self haste, and this is the best haste that you'll get in this era. I mean, you have your group haste, but they're not as good as the self haste. Alrighty. And the last way, I'd say this is the absolute least efficient way to solo. Absolute least efficient way. Is you can melee a mob until you're low in health. Mez it, just hold it mezzed and regen your health back up. And then go back and engage the fight when you're ready again. Basically, you're just fighting a mob, waiting until you get low on health because you're going to get smacked around, mezzing it, regenerating yourself up while that mob is held mezzed, and then you go back in and fight until the mob's eventually dead. You just keep doing the cycle. I would not recommend doing that, though. It's super slow, very inefficient. The thing about bards, though, in this on EverQuest Live is they don't have as much of a good ability to be able to solo as they did on P99. With the 1 minute long charm, your pet, if you pull something like 50 mobs like I did in Suits, like I did in Awakening Land Suits, 1 minute's too long. 6 suits will beat down on your one pet faster than your charm will last. The 6 suits could pretty much beat down on my pet in about 25 to 30 seconds. They could basically have my pet pretty much dead within that time period. And the pain too is on P99, I could recast my charm. I could start casting it early before the charm actually broke. In this, you have to wait till it breaks to recast the charm, which, man, it takes some time. It really does. And in fact, this costs 60 mana when you might not even get the full duration out of it at a higher level. It's not as efficient. It's not as worth it. It's more for spot crowd control in groups, to be honest. This is really where this is more useful. Because the problem with bards is one thing that I really do need to mention, one big thing about bards. There's absolutely nothing you can do to improve bard mana regen except for sitting. So this is the fastest mana regen you'll ever get standing up. 1 mana per tick. And this is the fastest you'll ever get, pretty much. 2 mana per tick by sitting down. And when you're sitting down, you can't twist. So, bard mana regen is garbage. There's ways to improve it. I think there's AA abilities and flowing thought items. But, I mean, they're so hard to get up until later expansions. You're probably not going to have anything until past Velius, reasonably. So, once you kind of burn that 60 mana, you're out of it until 60 ticks. Sad to say, but it sucks. And if you die, sorry, you're starting again from 0 mana. It's really it's really not that good. So let's talk about, I don't even know where I was going with that, but let's get into grouping. So what do you perform in groups? What are the functions you do in groups? So let me go into it. Let's use my group normal one. I use group haste one. Yeah, this is the one I have for groups. Okay, so what do you do in groups? I'll say this. This is the counterpoint. This is the best thing that bards do. This is really arguably the biggest thing that bards do in groups. They are hands down the best group pullers in the game in this time period. You can make an argument for monk. Yeah, because they have feign death. They're safer. But here's the problem with monks. They don't bring their own sow. They don't bring their own run speed. They don't have lull, so they can't split mobs. They can't split mobs by themselves. They have to have someone pretty much tag a mob off when they feign death in order to do the pulls. And they don't necessarily bring as much of the utility as bards do on the other back end. They can't charm and they can't mez. What if a pull goes wrong? What if you get rooted? What if you get mezzed? What if you get charmed? Well, here's the cool thing about bards. If I get rooted, I'll just mez the mob until my root breaks, or I could dispel the root off myself and then run back to the group, and I'm safe. I don't take any hits. Where a monk has to feign death and just hope. Yeah, a monk would just have to sit there, feign death, and hope too that if they're fighting a caster mob, that caster doesn't start the cast before they hit the feign death. Because if you get hit if a mob is casting before you start the feign death, it'll basically show that you are faking it, and you'll become ready to attack again. They'll re-engage you. Whereas as a bard, who cares? It doesn't matter. I don't have feign death. I'll just mez the mob that's casting on me. It'll break the cast. It'll interrupt the cast in the first place, which is one thing I need to mention. Your mez can be used to mez mobs, but also break casts. So keep that in mind. You can break a caster, you can break a complete heal that a caster is doing, you can break a gate, you can break all that. If you're early enough, you have to be very quick, but you can break casts. So bards offer that benefit. Bards offer that tremendous benefit to a group. So yes, and the biggest reason why I'll say is bards, they can pull faster than monks because they don't have to feign death. They don't have to have people split for them. They don't have to do that. They can split their own pull. And they can bring it back faster themselves with silos. And they can bring multiple mobs at a time because they can charm one for extra DPS. They can mez one on the way, so you only have to deal with one mob at a time. There's a lot of options of what bards can do when pulling. And what's nice is that where they differ too, I'd say bard is the best group puller. The next best is monk. And the third best I would say is ranger. It can be a tie between ranger and monk, but here's the thing. So rangers bring their own so they can run faster, they can pull faster. But the problem with rangers is they can lull, but they can only lull outdoors. They can't lull indoors. So their only ability to really split pulls is by using a root or by using a snare, which is not necessarily ideal. They can't lull indoors like bards can. And that's why hands down bards are the best, I argue, because they can lull indoors and outdoors, unlike rangers, which makes them tremendous. They pretty much have everything you would need to pull except the safety valve of feign death. And it gets irrelevant in later expansions because once, I think, Planes of Power, once they get Fading Memories or Fading Thought or something like that, they can basically wipe all aggro for just a portion of their mana and then go invis off of it. But in this classic era, what we're talking about, yeah. Now, I need to make a big distinction. Bards are not the best raid pullers. They are not. Monks are the best raid pullers, but bards are the best group pullers. Monks the safety valve of having feign death, and on a raid it doesn't matter about run speed. You're going to have people who can sew you. The safety valve of having feign death and being able to split is much better as a monk than as a bard. Especially with the high level of these mobs, you're going to get probably critical low resist as a bard and aggro them anyways and get the whole thing. You're just going to have to eat the death. So, let's go into what else bards can do in groups. They can crowd control. They are arguably the second best crowd control class in the game, although with some limitations because they can't mez up to 55 like necromancers can do. They can only mez to 45 so far until Kunark, which they get a higher level mez. So it can only mez up to 45, but you can charm to 51. And your crowd control ability is limited once you burn out of mana. Once you're out of mana, you can't charm those 51s. So after that point, you're useless against anything above 45 for crowd control. So that's why you really need an enchanter if you're going to go down to the hole, for instance, because bards will not be able to crowd control effectively. Their mana regen will not be able to keep up with that. So yeah, they got crowd control. They help out melees tremendously with haste to help them with their DPS, as well as they help out tanks tremendously because they can stack. They don't get the haste, which has a damage shield on it. It's level 57 that you get at Kunark. So they can't stack 2 damage shields yet. But you still have 1 damage shield. You have this stuff, the Psalms, Psalm of Purity, Psalm of Cooling, Vitality, Warmth. And what these do is they boost your resists against something specifically. So Psalm of Cooling helps you resist against heat. So it boosts your fire resists. It gives you Ultra Vision, I believe, and it also brings a damage shield that's minor. so you can boost damage that way. That's one thing they bring to the table. Another thing they bring to the table is, again, the fastest run speed in the game with Silos. They bring Mana Song, which is tremendous. This works different than P99. In P99, this was a pulse, so it only gave a boost of mana every single time that you casted it. Whereas on live, it's a static buff. You'll see. It stays on for this full duration. Instead, on P99, I'd have to constantly spam it. I'd have to pulse it. So this would have boosted mana right there. This would have done a boost of mana right there. This would have done a boost of mana right there, for example. So what you would have done on P99 is you would have had your Cantana, which has the HP and mana regen. That's static, like this buff. So you'd cast Cantana, and then you do 3 pulses of Cassandra's Chorus of Clarity to get the peak mana regen. But you don't have to do that here. So bards help tremendously with mana regen. Unfortunately, they can't use their own mana regen. Bards can also stack 2 HP regen songs simultaneously for a huge amount of hit points. So there's your main HP regen is going to be your Cantana or Hymn of Restoration line. So that's 3. Yeah, you can see the animations are jacked up on the new models. It looks like you're playing your instrument backwards. Whatever, I prefer the older looking models. So you got your Hymn of Restoration, and this can stack with 2 other HP regen songs. So you have Psalm of Mystic Shielding. This is a magic resist. This boosts magic resist. I think it adds a little. No, it doesn't add strength. Maybe a little bit of a rune on it, and it regens health too. It adds a little bit of health regen. The problem with this is it's singing, and it doesn't stack with most of your other resist songs. Or no, I think it does. Let me check real quick. Let's see. So let's take Guardian and Mystic. Let's see if these 2 stack. Oh, it's already there. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so those stack. Guardian and Mystic stack, so you can really pump up your magic resist high. I know, though, that Mystic Shielding does not stack with Nivs. This is the other one I'm going to talk about. Let's see if it stacks with Elemental or Purifying. If it doesn't stack with Elemental, it won't stack with Purifying. So no, those won't stack. Okay. All right, so that's pretty clear. So for HP regen, you'd want to stack Hymn or the Cantana and Psalm of Mystic Shielding, but better yet, you would actually want to use, if you don't need the magic resist, you can use Niv's Melody of Preservation, and the reason why you want to use Niv's is because it's a stringed instrument song. So Psalm of Mystic Shielding is singing, and you can't modify that yet without the epic. Whereas with Niv's, even with the epic, if you had a better stringed instrument mod than the epic's mod, you could regen more mana with these, more health with these 2. So yeah, you lay down a Niv's, and you lay down a Hymn of Restoration, and they both stack. Let's see how much health that's 39. 39. So that's 32 hit points per tick, and I'm using a 11 mod or 21 mod stringed instrument. So that helps out clerics tremendously. Other things you can do in a group is you can snare and slow. I think the slow is more useful aspect of this, but if a mob's running away, you can stop it from running by snaring it. So what do bards really do in groups? They're very great pullers. They help out your melee classes tremendously by damage shields and by having the haste, and they can reduce the amount of damage that melees take by putting a slow on a mob. They can be very controlled with their pulls. They can also help out tremendously with the healers in your group by giving you a crap load of health regen, and they can help healers have more mana with Mana Song, and they can also help your DPS casters have more mana, so they can DPS even more. Bards help every class in the group. Bards make every single class in the group better. The one thing about Bards, though, is you only want one. You only want one in a group. So keep that in mind. Like Enchanters, I'd say 4 is great in a group. That's amazing, but you only want one Bard because they won't stack together very well. Now let's talk about raids. What do Bards do on raids? So Bards can pull on raids. They can, but they don't necessarily have the safety valve of Feign Death like monks do. So in that regard, monks are better raid pullers. But what do bards bring to raids? So again, pretty much all the same stuff they bring to groups. They bring a lot of HP regen. They bring Mana Song, which is really needed for, say, for a heal chain group. If you're making a cleric heal chain group, there needs to be 1 bard and 5 clerics in it. That's how the group needs to be made. Or if you're going to be making a big DPS melee caster, a caster DPS group, 1 bard, 5 DPS casters. There needs to be a bard in these classes because you need to pump that mana regen. You ideally want 1 bard in every single raid group. What else do bards bring? They bring resists. This is the biggest thing they do on raids. They are the best class when it comes to pumping resists. So I can show this. So let's show how high the resist can go. So right now, I have 32 magic resist, so I'm going to do Guardian Rhythms, which is going to pump up magic resist, and Elemental, which will pump it up even higher. Bam. Oh, this is why I don't use Psalm of Mystic Shielding with my resist twist, because look, you get just as much magic resist with Psalm of Mystic Shielding as you do by using Elemental Rhythms, but the thing about Elemental is it also adds fire or cold, or if you use Purifying, you get disease and poison. You might as well. But let me go to raid. So yeah, this is the biggest thing that bards can do. They offer tremendous amounts of resistibility, which is huge. If you have any group that's within AoE range of most of these raid targets which do AoE, like Kha'Zix Thul, like Inaruk, like Finnegal, if you have people or there's a lot of targets in Sky which AoE, you really need a bard to be in the tank group to help the tanks resist more of those AoEs. You really need a bard in your melee groups, so in any of the melee groups, especially the DPS groups, so they get their resists. You need a bard in arguably the cleric group, not just for Mana Song, but also for the fact that if they're too close, the clerics need to be able to need to resist the dots and the AoEs. They're absolutely needed for resists in raids. That's one of their biggest functions that they bring to the table. One of the other things they do is that bards can dispel, but not as efficiently as enchanters or even necros. They can only dispel one thing at a time. However, they can do one thing interesting. They can group-wide dispel. This is their one single target dispel, single buff dispel. And with that dispel, actually, though, they can dispel some negative effects on themselves. They can dispel a root on themselves. They can dispel a dot sometimes. They can do that. With this one, though, Elenia's Disenchanting Melody, you can dispel everybody in the group. So if you have like a dot on the first slot on everybody in the group, a bard could dispel that, although I've never actually had to use it. And it takes a lot of coordination to do that. And the other thing you can do is Foofles in the classic era, but this barely lands. This is a dot that lowers MR. lowers magic resistance. I can get it up to 25, so it can help your casters land slows or dots or whatever, or nukes onto a raid target if you can land it, but it almost never lands on red cons. I don't even try half the time. Bards can also help with spot charms if needed, if you get a charm break from an enchanter or they get dispelled. And the last, one other thing I'll mention too is sometimes you go up against raid targets which dispel you, and this is also where bards shine. So Inaruk, Khazad-dûl, they dispel you, and what happens, or even if you go to Sky, these like gazing eyes or something, I have them in a video, they dispel everything off of you. So when you're fighting these things and playing a Sky, you really need to make sure that all of your casters, all your clerics are far away, and your melees are fighting them from a distance away, these evil eye things, because those evil eyes are just going to completely strip all the buffs on everybody within melee range. And the thing about it is, so no one's buffed, well, that means people don't have haste, they don't have resist, they don't have HP regen, they don't have mana going on. So bards can, in their regular twist, compensate for the dispels. So you can consistently keep some haste onto whoever's in your group if you're in the melee group fighting these mobs that dispelled. You can keep something on these people no matter what, even if they're getting dispelled. And even in niche situations, this is where bards also shine. So I'm going to show two things. So often I'll swap out Foofles, and I'll put on Aguilamenti's Aria of Eagles. I'll keep this in my twist. So this is your Levitate song. Why am I showing this? When you fight Khazad-dûl, when you fight Inaruk, these mobs have a gravity flux, the gravity flux AoE, and this gravity flux is also tied with the dispel. So before you fight these guys, you need to have a Levitate on or DMF, but what often happens during the fight is it gets stripped off, it gets dispelled. So the problem is, once that Levitate or DMF gets dispelled, if the gravity flux goes off, you're going to get flown in the air. And if you don't have safe fall, like pretty much every class doesn't, except for monks, rogues, and bards, you're going to get hit. You're going to take a lot of falling damage. You're going to get flung all across the map. So what the advantage is, as a bard, is you can keep this. You can keep Aria's Aguilamenti of Eagles. You can keep this in your song twist when fighting Khazad-dûl or when fighting Inaruk, and you can counteract all the dispels so that there's always a levitate up. So people aren't getting flung around, they aren't taking falling damage. This was tremendously useful when I was in the cleric group. The clerics were getting flung all around. I remember on P99 when I was in the cleric heal train group, because the clerics got their levitate dispelled, and I kept this levitate up so they wouldn't be flung around as much, so they can do their job, they could heal the main tank as needed. It was tremendously helpful to have this. And the other thing you can do, instead of using levitate, let's talk about another niche fight, enduring breath. So this is for Kedge Keep when you fight Finnegal Autotrops. And what this is for is Finnegal, he dispels too, but you need enduring breath when you go down to Kedge Keep. It's a completely underwater zone. So the thing about Kedge is if you don't have an item on you which has enduring breath, then you need to have a buff on you which does it. So DMF does the same thing, Dead Man's Floating. It can be that enduring breath for you, as well as some summon water stones magicians can make and all that. But again, if you're fighting Finnegal, he's likely to dispel you, which means your enduring breath will get dispelled and you'll start drowning. Yeah, you'll start drowning in Kedge Keep. So as a bard, you can always keep up this enduring breath song to counteract the dispels that Finnegal might have, which helps out tremendously. And I'm just going to talk about some last points about playing bard before I wrap up this video. Or really just one point I would like to make. So bards, one of the really cool things too to keep in mind I like to mention other things bards can do. So, let's look through the spell book. Bards can also sap mana from a mob. Well, this is an AoE, so you have to be careful, but they can also sap mana from a mob. So if you're dealing with a lot of really nasty casters that heal or nuke, you can drain all their mana if you need to. They can interrupt spells with their mez. They can... What else do they got? They can find corpses. If they can target your corpse and you're in the same zone, they can find your corpse. And the last thing I'll mention is the fact that bards are the only class in the game. So if I was Kadorian right now, or if I was any other caster class, if I were to play this and move, it would get interrupted. It would not go off. Bards are the only class in the game that can move and cast a spell simultaneously. So you don't have to worry about it going through. And it even goes farther than that. So even if you have a clicky, which is a caster thing, like turtle shell boots, the Lotus shell boots, which have the turtle armor or something, I forget. It's a level 8 shaman buff. So that's a shaman spell. So, if you're moving, it shouldn't land, right? It should get interrupted. Well, no. I can show example exactly right here. Look at this. So, Guys the Deceiver. This is a cast thing that you'd have to land. Look at this. I'm moving the whole entire time on something that's not even a song and still goes off. And the other thing I'll show is one thing I learned the hard way. There was an instance of where people trained me over there. I had the video up. They trained specters on me. And I thought, like every other class, that you had to sit still to cast Origin. As a bard, no, you don't. You can actually cast Origin while moving like this. So you can actually be running away and get away safely. You don't have to sit still and hope to God that you have enough distance between you and the mob to cast that Origin. No, you can run away the whole time. So, alrighty. Thank you guys all for... Oh, no, I need to mention some other things. So as a bard, you want to ideally twist 4 songs in a row. You can do 4 songs at one time. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yep, you can usually do 4 at one time. And one of the things you're going to want to do as a bard, you're going to have a bandolier set up for all your instruments. You can see in my macros I have for all my quick casts. This is how it is. You want to do stop song, so it breaks the current song you're playing. Cast whatever spell gem it is, and then you want to activate the bandolier, which does the maximum benefit for any particular song. So percussion, I want to have percussion for Silos. So swap bandolier to percussion. If I'm playing HP regen, I want to give string for maximal efficiency. So that, for example, that's if you're manually twisting. But you don't even have to do that. You can do melody command here on live as opposed to P99 to get the manually twist. So what you'll do on a melody is this. You want to stop your song, cast your melody, and if you ideally want, you can also do your bandolier. So I color code a lot of my stuff. So this one has nothing on it. It's just casting the spell gems. That's if I need something quick and I don't want to spam people. This one's for my grouping. That's my macro set for grouping. Yeah, you can see that that's where they are. These are my spell sets for grouping. Yellow is for my travel set. Purple is for my raid. These are my different raid saved spell sets. And that's the macro for loading your save spell sets. /mem spell set. And these are the melodies I have for each one of these particular circumstances. This is one I have for just pulling or even just travel. 1, 2, 3. Let's see why. 1, 2, 3. So it's CeeLo, Levitate, and HP Regen. That's what 1, 2, 3 is. Some other things show. Yeah, you should have up also Bandolier the Bandolier activates for each one of your ability sets. And that's kind of all. A lot of this stuff is just pulling information for pulling. But anyways, yeah. I think that's pretty much it for the bards. Class 1 through levels 1 through 50 in the classic era. That's pretty much all I have for this video. So thank you guys all for watching. Hope this was informative.